Welcome to Scoop World Order. It is Monday night. We have a big show tonight talking a lot of recruiting, maybe a new leader in the clubhouse for the 2024 quarterback. A lot of things breaking. The team is on spring break, and as soon as they get back, it is time to grind during spring ball. But we have a lot of stuff to talk about with Bill Greene. We're going to take your questions as always, and we're going to have a fantastic show. A lot of stuff to talk about. Bank always brings it, so we're going to get right into it. But first, as always, thank you guys for being a member of this. We just passed a new milestone of subscribers, so thank you. If you enjoy this content, please click subscribe, click like, comment. Who do you want the 2024 quarterback to be? Obviously, the Dylan Raiola fiasco is over with and done, and we have about 3 guys that are in the mix to be the quarterback. And also comment, how much you even care about recruiting with quarterbacks now with the transfer portal and with Ryan Day at the controls. I frankly don't care anymore because I think that he's always going to have a great quarterback ready to go. But I'd love your opinion on that. So leave that in the comments, and also shout out where you guys are from. Love when you guys do that. You guys have been doing that a lot. We got a South Korea. So if you guys could beat South Korea, that'd be fantastic. We have guys all over the world watching the show. We appreciate every one of you. That being said, going to get in my friend, Bill the Bank Greene. Bank, how are you tonight?
Real good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good. So I know that the odds shift. It's almost like I wish that the Ohio sports books that are online now could shift the 2024 quarterback derby. Because at this time last year, didn't have a guy committed. We got through spring ball. Dylan Raiola was silently committed. And it was like holy matrimony. We are married. We are not talking to anybody. We're not dating anybody. And then all of a sudden, the divorce of the century happens, and Dylan Raiola deletes everything off Twitter, leaves Ohio State kind of high and dry in the quarterback race because they cut off Jaden Davis. They weren't really recruiting anybody else. Where does it stand today, March 13th, in the 2024 quarterback derby? Who are some of the names, and who's maybe the new potential leader that you believe could be our quarterback in 2024's class?
Yeah, I think there's 3 guys right now, and I think the same 3 have kind of been there for a while. You mentioned Jaden Davis. They obviously, were headed toward a commitment with him. They were working toward that. And then Raiola kind of came out of nowhere to steal that spot from him. So then Ohio State kind of kicked Jaden Davis to the curb. He moved on, not happily. And then Raiola was the guy until, around Christmas time last year. Raiola was not the guy. He left the class, and it's been an uphill battle for Ohio State to try to get back in with Jaden Davis. Kind of, smooth feelings over. Some feathers were ruffled, and it was nasty. And so that what they're trying to do is, trying to look at it from the aspect that this is business. This isn't personal. Don't take it personal. You know what I mean? It's what's the best for you, young man. You know what I mean? And you have to decide that. So I think they would take his commitment. I think they'd like to have him. And there's a lot of fences need mended there. And they're trying, but I don't think they're mended right now. And I don't know that they will be. We'll see. I mean, they're going to keep trying. Then there's Julian Sayin, who is committed to Bama, but I keep being told that the window's cracked there for Ohio State. There's a slight opening there. And boy, how long do you play with him? Do you keep trying to woo him, trying to get him on campus until you finally say, oh my God, I've wasted 6 months with Julian Sayin. He tells me he's staying with Bama, and now we got to take some 3-star out of Connaughton Valley or something. So, that's the game they're playing right now. And then there's the guy that I think is the favorite in the clubhouse right now is Noland out of Georgia. And he's a lefty. Like we were talking about before, they averaged, 90 points a game or whatever it was last year. It's crazy. They like him, but yet he has not been offered. Jaden Davis has an offer. Julian Sayin has an offer. I think both of those kids could call Ohio State today and commit, and I think the commit would be taken. With Air told me personally when I was in Florida about a month ago, he told me personally that Ohio State has told him if he will show up on his dime, they will offer him. He has to make the first move and show that he is very much interested in Ohio State. That visit is going to take place here in a couple of weeks. And I'm assuming, if what he's been told is true, he's going to get an offer. Now, the interesting thing is Ohio State has some time leading up to that to kind of gauge where are we at with Sand, where are we at with Jaden Davis, and what do we do if Air throws his hand up on that unofficial visit? They say you have an offer, and he says I'm in. What do they do? My guess is what they're going to want to do is probably try to get him to take an official visit then in June, by a little bit more time, to see where you're at with Sand and Davis. And then, if you do end up taking Aaron Noland, I mean, he's a heck of a prospect. I mean, it's not, again, this is not a bad place to be in for Ohio State. When I talked to Air a month ago, he also told me very, very interested in Clemson. And I think it was sort of the same deal. Show up, show us you love us, you like us, you're interested, and we'll offer you. Clemson did offer last weekend. So we'll see what happens there. I think there's a lot of moving parts here, for Ohio State. And the one thing to remember is so many of the past quarterbacks for Ohio State, they didn't get them until late in the process. The first signing day is now in December. They got Kineholz last year late in the process. They got Devin Brown the year before late in the process. Heck, they got Justin Fields late in the process, very late, as a transfer in January or February, I believe. Dwayne Haskins they took in, my gosh, I think it was after first of the year when they got Dwayne Haskins. So, this can go a long way. And again, not to panic with quarterback, with Ryan Day. They're going to get somebody good. I can promise you that. If they would somehow not get one of these three, they'll get somebody else. I mean, he'll go to somewhere else and get somebody to flip from a big time program. So, we just never really need to worry about quarterback as long as Ryan Day is there and they have this high flying offense. They're going to get good quarterbacks all the time, as they have shown, since Ryan Day has been there. Never seen Ohio State play, without a big time quarterback, other than maybe year one when he had to play JT Barrett against his will, probably. But anyway, the leader in the clubhouse right now, according to what I can see, is Air Noland. And that could go quick. That could move forward pretty quickly once he visits.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy I didn't, I knew that he was heralded. He was from Jelani Thurman's high school, but he was the state player of the year in the state of Georgia, which is a lot different than being the state player of the year in North Dakota or something. Like, Georgia's got monsters, and he was the player of the year there. Broke the record for Georgia offense. They scored like 796 points in 15 games. So do the math. That's a lot of points. And, so he's prolific, but there's got to be something there that he doesn't have an all capital offer,
Yeah.
and they still want him to come up here and see him and throw. And, so obviously Ohio State, they like the kid. They're not completely sold on the kid because he doesn't have a committable offer yet, but quarterback is like Russian roulette, man. Because if you offer a kid with the capital offer and they commit, then you're kind of, here we are, you're kind of running to the altar with them. And it's hard because the process is so sped up to the point where you're taking commitments from sophomores because there's only one chair. There's only one, you play musical chairs and there's only one chair with the quarterback and maybe two at most, like when you have a Miller Stroud kind of class. But it's tough because, we jumped into bed with Dylan Raiola and we said, we're not going to talk to anybody. We're not going to talk to any 23s. We're not going to talk to any 24s. Then he says, I don't love you no more. And he ends up going to wherever he ends up. And I don't know. It's tough. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if this kid gets here. But again, like you said, under Ryan Day, I never sweat the quarterback position just because with the transfer portal and especially with the receivers we're bringing in, like with JJ and potentially JoJo and Ennis and Tate and the Rogers brothers, like you've got like just monsters to throw to. And that's kind of half the battle when you're playing quarterback is just having guys that like to get open. And Brian Hartline isn't going to throw the ball less, I promise you, as the offensive coordinator. It's not like we're going to come in, turn into Perry running the wing T all of a sudden with Hartline as the coordinator.
No, and it's still Ryan Day's offense.
Yes.
Brian Hartline, when Ryan Day wants Hartline's opinion, he'll tell him what it is. So And then with another thing about Aaron Noland that I gathered when I spoke to him is he's really smart about recruiting, and he knows that schools only take one quarterback generally. So he's very cognizant of having a chair when the music stops. So his process is very much speeded up. He's not looking at himself as, hey, I'm Terrell Pryor. I'll sign when I want to sign because everybody wants me. That's not the way he's looking at it. He's very realistic about how quarterback recruiting goes, very mature. So his process is speeded up. So I don't know that Ohio State will be able to delay him much, you know, when he shows up here in a couple of weeks, because he's got Clemson in his back pocket. And I think Air wants to be committed soon. I don't think he wants to play the game. He knows the game. And I think he knows how to play the game as a quarterback. So, you know, it's a lot different than DBs where schools will take 4 or 5 DBs in a class. Heartline will take 4 wide receivers in a class. Man, these schools only take 1 quarterback generally. So Air's cognizant of that, and Air's going to be looking for he's looking to call the control tower and get a landing here going real soon.
Yeah, because if a school is taking a second quarterback, I'd be like, oh snap, what did I do? Yeah, because like Justin Zwick, and they take. Go ahead.
When Ohio State took C.J. Stroud in December, that told you everything you needed to know about how they saw Jack Miller.
Yeah.
It was like, we're taking a second quarterback. If you want to stay, you can stay. If you're mad and you want to leave, you know, okay, we're good. You know, whatever you want to do is fine. But we're taking C.J. Stroud. So.
Yeah, it was like Zwick and Troy Smith. They added Troy like the day before signing day, and like, oh yeah, he's an athlete. Then he shows up and he's in the quarterback room, and you're like, oh, he's not an athlete. Yeah. He's actually a quarterback. Like it is crazy. Nevada, or excuse me, Bank. We've got recruiting of other positions coming up. You know, running backs. It looks like we're getting a kid from Pickering to North. Your thoughts on him as we get rolling into camp season? Do you think, and I know your opinion on this, but are we offering guys too early without seeing them in camp? I feel like with Urban, you know, we would have waited to see some of these guys work out, and Urban probably would have made some of these guys work out 2, 3, 4, or 8 times before he'd actually pull the trigger and offer them. But, you know, we seem to be offering a lot of kids early that really we haven't seen work out, you know, since November or October. But what are your thoughts on kind of this new wave of how we do our recruiting, and are we going too early on some of these guys?
Well, I think so, but they know more than I know. I just know in the past, you know, with the early years of Ryan Day up to last year, and then the years of Urban, you know, I don't think they would take a Sam Williams-Dixon in March when you've got Stacey Gage, the Marshall kid, the Peoples kid out there. You definitely want to take 2 running backs in this class. But I'd want to see if I could pull Peoples and Marshall. And it's nothing against Sam Williams-Dixon, who heck of a talent. But there's a pecking order for everyone, and there's a recruiting order for everyone. And you know, I think I would wait on him to see him in camp, to see how much better he is. I would almost want to wait and see 2, 3, 4 games of next year, because the competition he's going to play next year is unlike where he has been. You know what I mean? He's going from single A ball to starting for the Yankees next year. So I'd want to see more out of him. I like what I see, though. I mean, he's, you know, it's probably nitpicking. And again, they know more than I know, and I know that. But, you know, you asked me the question, so I gave you the answer.
I had to camp and didn't get offered until December, so don't cry for me, Argentina, for some of these kids saying, "Oh, I'm not respected," or I didn't get a yeah. And Heartline was the same way. That's the thing I love about Heartline being on sevens. He didn't get offered until he had to camp 5 days in a row to get that offer. So, you know, if someone's
he doesn't offer these type of kids. You know what I mean? Heartline goes coast to coast, nationwide, all big time guys. He's competing against Georgia, Bama, USC, Texas. He'll go anywhere to get his guy. Well, I think every position group should be recruited that way. I want the best of the best. I don't care where your address is. I mean, I think Urban showed that when his way of doing business compared to Tressel's, I think is more modern. I wouldn't recruit off the addresses. I want the best I could get at every single position, and it's what they're doing at quarterback, and it's what they're doing. Heartline does at wide receiver. Well, I'd want a Heartline at every position on my coaching staff, and that's how I'd want to recruit every position. The way he does wide receivers, I think that's the way it needs to be done.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, especially this early, man, it's like you got to go after the biggest fish possible. And if those fish get captured by Georgia or Bama or Clemson, then you got to move on to the medium-sized fish. And then, heaven forbid you get a bunch of small fish, because the small fish aren't going to win the wars for you the way that the big fish do, So that's kind of where I'm at. Go ahead.
Nobody's signing anything right now. You know what I mean? So if you don't take a kid today and he gets mad and he runs off and commits to Indiana or Michigan State, the odds are high that you can get back in on him later in the game and flip him. Bama flips people all the time. You know what I mean? So it's what you do. I mean, it's big boy ball. It's the way I would do it. But Ryan Day, super successful, super smart. He knows what he's doing.
Bank, I got a great one from Sue, who's on every one of our live episodes. Do you think J.J. Smith sticks?
Your thoughts, Bank? I do, but I think he's going to take every visit known to man. I think he should take every visit. I think he'll take all 5 officials. I think there's going to be a ton of drama. He's only got one official scheduled right now, and to no surprise, it's to Ohio State. That's the only one. And then knowing the family like I do, I know his dad, I know his uncle, I know his cousin who just signed multi-million-dollar deal. Gino, I'm so happy for him. Yeah. Knowing the family like I do, I just think that they've done their homework, and I think they're looking at this long term. They want him to play in a big-time offense. They want him coached up, by Brian Hartline playing Ryan Day's offense. He's always going to have a quarterback there. And they're always going to play in an up-tempo, high-octane offense where he's going to catch 70, 80, 90 balls a year. I think it makes so much sense for JJ to come to Ohio State. He loves it. He loves Hartline. The family's totally sold on Ohio State and Hartline. They love Tony Alford, Ryan Day. I mean, it makes so much sense to me that I do think I think JJ will sign with Ohio State. I have no reason to think he won't. There's no consternation at all among the SFE people. And they'll tell me like, hey, you might want to watch out here. When Carlton Davis was committed to Ohio State, they told me 2 weeks before signing day, there was 0 chance Carlton Davis would come to Ohio State. And he was 100% committed in his eyes and, his words. And they told me, oh, this is between Auburn and Miami. Ohio State's out of it. They know what they're talking about. And they tell me there is no worry at all for JJ in Ohio State. So I believe these guys.
JJ is one of my favorite kids I've ever been around because he's all business. This kid is not a clown. He is not, when he's not in the game, he's locked in. He's on the sideline, he was playing catch with Air. And Air, the one thing I will say about Air is he has an absolute cannon of an arm, because they were playing catch, and it wasn't like Air took a couple throws to get loose. Like the first throw that he threw was an absolute. He's like, I mean, the guys looked around like, oh snap! He's not this. This is like soft toss warm up. It was like first throw, I'm going to throw it through your skull. And and JJ just he catches everything with hands, no bobbles, just like, and he's like a killer cyborg robot, because he doesn't celebrate after touchdowns. He just dunks on guys and goes on to the next play. And I talked to his dad for a long time when I was down in Naples, and I talked to JJ. Not JJ's not a real talkative kid, but I talked to him for a hot minute. I interviewed him, and couldn't have been a nicer kid. Like, he's a kid that he's all business, and I think that seeing what Gino went through, he just signed for a 3-year, $105 million deal when he was essentially like kind of a throw-in quarterback to replace Russell Wilson. Essentially he was like a guy that was going to be a holdover until they could draft somebody. And then, he makes the Pro Bowl. He leads the NFL in completion percentage and has a nice year. And now he's making $35 million a year for the next 3 years. And, He's had I think that, what Geno went through when he didn't get drafted in the first round and fired his agent on draft night and kind of all that craziness. It lends some perspective to what JJ, is getting ready to go through over the next 4 years, because he's going to be, a sought after guy. He's going to go through the draft process, and he's going to be, a fantastic player, barring any type of injury. So I think he's locked into Ohio State. I think that a guy like Brian Hartline, who's workmanlike, and a guy who is tough like Brian is something that I think is appealing to JJ. And the fact that, the offense that we run is, it just churns out prolific receivers for the NFL. That never hurts. That's why when some of these kids are kind of him-hawing about becoming, the quarterback at Ohio State in 2024, I'm like, I don't know what you're waiting on. Because, like, if I'm one of these kids and I have an offer from Ohio State and I see that they've got Ennis and Tate and they've got Hartline calling the plays and Jelani Thurman and, JJ Smith coming, like, I'm signing up for that squad of skill guys like today, because, you're only as good as your infrastructure when you're a quarterback. You got a bunch of turd receivers and bad O-line, and you got to play in a tough conference. Like, you come to Ohio State, you're playing in the Big Ten. You have better players than every team you go against, and you're going to put up big numbers. Like CJ Stroud today in online betting moved to be the number one overall pick. He's at minus 300. So he's 3-1 to be the first overall pick to Carolina now. So Ryan Day's got it going on. Justin Fields should have probably been the number 2 pick behind Trevor Lawrence a couple of years ago. So I don't know what you guys are waiting on to play quarterback and to play a skill guy position for Ryan Day, but it's crazy right now. Yeah, we got a ton of questions on here for you, Bank. Bank, we always have an O-line recruiting question. How are you feeling as of today on the O-line recruiting? Just give me a quick little synopsis on that. And are we done? Like, do you think that we're going to take 5 and you get the last 2 guys that we kind of see as low-hanging fruit?
Well, they'll take 5 for sure, maybe 6. You've got Ian Moore in, Mark Nave in, the twins are in. That gives you 4. So then Jordan Seaton, I think they're the favorite for 5, and then go after a big time tackle. But I mean, you're not really in on one right now, so it's kind of hard to get in on a big time tackle. And things are rolling here. I don't know who that would be. So they're going to take 5 for sure. And if I had to guess, it would be Ian Moore, Mark Nave, the Armstrong twins, and Jordan Seaton. There's your 5. Decent group, and away you go.
Yeah, I think that's right. But man, you got to take a swing at a national tackle, and if you got to back up the NIL truck, you got to do it. And that's what it costs to get these big time tackles now, because you see where the guys are going. They're going to the Hurricanes and Oregon, and you got to back that truck up. So I get this question every podcast, even when you're not on, Bank, and I know the answer to it, but I'm going to ask you. Can we talk about Sammy Brown? And I don't think that there's anything to Sammy Brown at this point other than he's going to Clemson. But is that your read on Sammy Brown at this current moment?
Yeah, it is. I don't see how you can get in on him when Clemson, Miami, Alabama, Georgia, they're going to be in his school every chance they get. And the point guy that you would want for Sammy Brown would be a great recruiter. And that's James Laurinaitis. It hasn't proven to be Jim Knowles, who is sitting on 0 in linebacker recruiting now. And we're heading into his second class, and hasn't gotten anyone yet. So I would want James Laurinaitis to do the recruiting of Sammy Brown, but it's hard to do it when James can't leave campus. And Clemson's going to send their people in there. Georgia's going to send their people. They're going to be in his high school so much, you're going to think there's students there or student teachers there. And, James can't go. He can't be on the road. So I think you're recruiting Sammy Brown, who's the number 1 linebacker in America. You're recruiting him with one hand tied behind your back. And I don't think that's the way to do it. You're not going to beat Bama and Georgia when Sammy has to come see you. You can't go see him. I don't see how you get him. I would love to have him. I think he's super. Sammy Brown he's a dude, and you win national championships with dudes. So I would love to have Sammy Brown. Would love to recruit the heck out of Sammy Brown, but I just don't think you do it with Jim Knowles, who's I don't think is not a great recruiter. I think James Laurinaitis potentially is a great recruiter. I see James Laurinaitis as the defensive Brian Hartline. Turn him loose. Let him go. I mean, you know James better than anyone. I mean, am I wrong in my perception of how good James Laurinaitis can be as a recruiter?
I think James has no ceiling. I think he's got a higher ceiling than Brian Hartline. I've known James. He's been better than Brian Hartline at everything he's done. He's been a better college football player. He's a better pro football player, a better high school football player. And same work ethic. He was a captain, 3-time All-American. I love James. And I'm unapologetic about that. He knows I'm his biggest cheerleader. He appreciates I'm his biggest cheerleader. But he's the guy of all of my former teammates that I would say, Kirk, I'm going to put a gun to your head in 10 years, 5 years. Who's the guy that you think could be the next head coach at Ohio State? I'd say James, because I think that that's this kind of ceiling. Because I think that he's a really dynamic recruiter. And again, I think it's a crime against humanity right now that he's not a top 10 coach at Ohio State, because you need some young blood and some energy on that defensive front seven. Because you look at probably our two worst recruiters right now on the staff are Larry Johnson and Jim Knowles, just in terms of being able to get out and stretch your legs. Now, obviously, Larry Johnson has brought in more blue chip top guys than anybody in history, but he's almost 70 now. So I mean, again, like the Bosa's were 10 years ago, Nick and Joey. So and those guys were, if I was the head coach at Ohio State, they were coming to Ohio State. The mom went to Ohio State, the uncle went to Ohio State. The mom loved, she's Mrs. Buckeye. So Jim Tressel would have gotten Nick and Joey Bosa. I know people don't believe that, but I know the mom really well. I know Nick and Joey really well. So those guys were like Ohio State kids. It wasn't like the parents went to Florida State and then we magically yanked them out of South Florida. There was a good connection there. But I think that, I was shocked that we extended Parker Fleming over 2 years, because it seemed like the natural progression would be to put James Laurinaitis in that spot and let him go hit the road and start recruiting after spring ball. Just because I'm worried about the linebacker room in a year or two. Because, when you take a goose egg, and it was the same with the running back room. Like this year, the running back room is as loaded as we've ever had. But at the same token, after this year, you're losing Mayan, Travion, who knows to the portal if you lose Pryor or Chip to the portal. So really all you have left is Dallin Hayden, and then you don't have a freshman in the class other than the walk-on from Massillon. So, you're kind of up the creek. And then you look at our linebacker room and, you'll have CJ Hicks, potentially Cody Simon. But, you didn't get Tackett Curtis, or you didn't get Troy Bowles, or like a 5-star Raekwon McMillan type stud to fill in and step in and be that next difference maker and play next to CJ Hicks. Because, that's the thing, is when you miss on an entire class, you get a couple transfers, man, and you're going to be up the creek. And it kind of, it's showing it on the O-line right now, because we've had so much attrition on the O-line. The Harry Miller situation, you lose Paris early, you lose DeWand early, you lose Luke Whippler early. Nobody going into last season, there were probably whispers that DeWand could potentially go pro. Nobody in the universe. I mean, the coaches were surprised. I wasn't surprised, because I knew Luke was going pro by the middle of the season, but the coaches were all surprised that Luke went pro. And so all of a sudden you're shuffling guys around, and you lose Ryan Jacoby, you lose Max Ray. So, Nick Petit Frere goes pro a year early. So it kind of resets the room, because all of a sudden you have all these tackles and now you don't have any tackles. So, it's just part of the gig. And, when you've got all these good tackles, sometimes kids that are big time tackles, 4- and 5-star kids, they look at that depth chart and they're like, well, I'm not going to start over DeWand and Paris. So why would I go there, or Thayer or Nick Petit or whatever? So now it's, it gets ugly in a hurry. Now we're putting Josh Fryer out at left tackle, and we've got open auditions at right tackle, and we got to put it together with masking tape and duct tape to try and make the O-line work. And heaven forbid Josh Fryer gets hurt, and then you're putting Zen and George Fitzpatrick out as your tackles with Tigra, and that's going to be where it's at. And I'm not saying those guys can't do it, but they're young, they're freshmen and true freshmen. So when you're wheeling out true freshmen and redshirt freshmen and redshirt sophomores that have never started games before, it can be, a little unnerving. I've been both a player who was that young, and I've also coached guys that were that young. And I know that it takes a couple years for those guys to get right, unless they're Paris Johnson. Like Paris is just a different beast because he's, a top 10 pick. But most of the guys that you're coaching aren't top 10 picks, no matter where you're at. So, but it's going to be fascinating. Like I root for James more than anybody. When he got out of broadcasting, I was like, he's going to be a rock star head coach. And as he's learning coaching, the thing that where he could really be the biggest asset, it's kind of like what Brian Hartline was before he really knew what he was doing as a coach, is he was a great recruiter because he's got personality. He's smart. Brian's got that Miami, crap going, because he played for the Dolphins for a few years. So he kind of has that going with, Ennis and JJ. Like he knows his way around down there a little bit. So that doesn't hurt. But yeah, Bank, were you surprised by some of the extensions and some of the coaching moves this offseason? Because I was really surprised, but that's my opinion. I'd love your opinion on that.
Yeah, I kind of thought they might be inclined to not go with a full-time special teams coach, and kind of split it up the way a lot of staffs do. A lot of staffs don't have a dedicated special teams coach. I don't think Urban did he?
He demoted Kerry Combs the one year and made him a special teams coordinator, but that was when they made Chris Ash the full-time secondary coach, and they demoted Kerry.
But so I kind of thought that might happen, especially you had the 2 botched fake punts against Michigan. You had another botched fake punt against Georgia, and I thought that might be like, this ain't good. You know what I mean? So, but that I thought they might go that way. And then, when they brought in James, it's like, oh my God, at what point do you make him a full-time coach and get him out on the road? Because if you listed the Ohio State coaches strictly on their recruiting ability, top to bottom, Hartline would be at the top for sure. And then where would you slot James in? I mean, James, he'd be up there pretty high, especially, I'm saying, if you could turn him loose. Say the NCAA had gone to that extra coach. They were talking about adding an extra coach on the road. Had they done that, and if James, when it opens up and you give him free reign, set him out on the road, where would he be in terms of recruiters, strictly recruiters on this staff? You got Hartline as a clear one. I don't know. James would be up there pretty high for me, and I've never seen him recruit anyone. But we both kind of feel the same way about James. I think he's the defensive Brian Hartline, and I think he'd be, I don't know, top 3, top 4, top 5 in your staff. I mean, you probably think he'd be higher. I mean, maybe he would be.
I think he'd be too. I mean, I think that the kids, again, you think about the cat.
I like Perry Iliano a lot.
Yeah.
I think he's really special. But then, I mean, I like Tony Alford, but Tony's had some, last year was not his fault. The Mark Fletcher thing was not his fault. And I think Tony's really good. But he's had some, classes that weren't so stellar. So James Laurinaitis would be in the top 5 for sure of your top recruiters. And recruiting's the lifeblood of your program. If he's a better recruiter than 4, 5, 6, 7 other guys, then he deserves to be on the road.
Yeah, and I think,
recruiting's it's that important to your program.
Yeah, and with James, with the attributes I know with James, work ethic, A++, off the charts.
Right.
Just an absolute werewolf. Like the guy won't sleep. The guy will, and plus I always judge coaches by kind of the cachet that they bring when they walk into a building. So, I was recruited by Trussell. Obviously, after winning the national championship, he had high cachet. But Urban was like an even higher level of cachet. When Urban would walk into a high school in Ohio or in the South, with the Florida Gator stuff and the Ohio State stuff, like that's like Mick Jagger walking into a high school. There's that different level. And I'm not saying Brian Hartline and James aren't anywhere near what peak Urban was. When it's like when Nick Saban walks into a high school or Kirby Smart. Like there's certain guys that you see them, you recognize them, you know exactly who they are, and that's important because some of these kids that they know James's accolades. He was an All-American, won the Butkus. He played in the league for 10 years. He's the all-time leading tackler for the Los Angeles Rams. Like great NFL career. Like he is what these kids want to become. They want to become, first round picks, and they want to become big time NFL players and get that $60 million extension like James got. So, he's got that kind of cachet. They've heard of him. He's got kind of a funny last name. And, but I think that,
See, the thing I think people are missing is with James Laurinaitis, you can look at him and you could see that he is not 6'4", 230 pounds cut out of granite. He looks like a normal dude. And then when you look at Brian Hartline, these kids look at Brian Hartline and they're not seeing Randy Moss, who will put in the tape and say, just do what I did. Well, they can't do that. They look at Hartline as the guy that had to be the smartest, the toughest. He had to run every route correctly. He had to catch every ball, and so then J.J. Smith looks at that and sees, well, I've got amazing talent. What I need is somebody to teach me the fine points of the game, the nuances of the game. I need a teacher, when Brian is certainly that. Brian didn't get by being able to run by people, jump over people, and make one-handed grabs. That wasn't Brian's strength. That's not what kept him in the league all those years. And it's the same thing with James. You know what I mean? James was not the fastest linebacker in the league, the biggest linebacker in the league. He had to be the smartest. He had to do everything right. So when you see this big-time superstar LB talent out there, and he can be coached by James, who's not going to put in the film and say, do it the way I did it. He's going to put in the film and say, I had to do it this way. I had to do this. I had to be smarter than everybody. I had to anticipate better than everyone. So, and that's the thing is, and when you describe James's work ethic, and you try to fast forward it to him recruiting, the thing that people miss about Brian Hartline and is how hard he works. And the coaches out there that I talk to, I mean, Hartline's at this from 6 a.m. until midnight every night. I mean, he grinds like crazy, and it's not all, he gets all the 5 stars and it's so easy for him. No, Brian is out working people. And I think the way you describe James, from how you know him personally, I think it would be the same thing on the defensive side of the ball. And recruiting is not being the fastest talker, the smoothest dude. It's not that at all. It's hard work. It's effort. It's sales is what it is. Mm-hmm. And that's why I would love to see James out there, full time, give him his itinerary and turn him loose, hit the road, and then call me in about 3 weeks and let me know where we're at.
That's right. Get him the rental car in South Florida and in Georgia, and let him go drive around and see all these fast linebackers. And hey, we need you. Come join us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Let's see if we have any final questions, and we'll lock this thing up. But yeah, I love, it's hard when you see us get a goose egg at running back and a goose egg at linebacker, because it's just like, I don't know if that's ever happened. You've been doing recruiting a lot longer than I have. I don't think we've ever. It's rare to get a goose egg at a position, but I mean, it won't hurt us at running back this year. But I mean, man, it's just strange to see that.
Plus, in Tony Alford's defense, Mark Fletcher got an amazing NIL offer from Miami. It couldn't be refused. Okay. Tony didn't lose that one. They love Tony Alford. They see the opportunity at Ohio State. But man, cash is king. And NIL, I mean, even the SFE guys if you ask the SFE guys today, who's their favorite coach on the Ohio State staff, it's Tony Alford without question. They love Tony. And they were happy that Mark Fletcher was coming to play for Tony. But then, John Ruiz stepped in. And then they were very happy that Mark Fletcher and his dad decided to take that NIL deal from Miami. Because, man, it's, he got paid like a second or third round NFL running back. I mean, he had to take it. He had to take that offer. So, in Tony Alford's defense, he did a tremendous recruiting job on Mark Fletcher. And circumstances dictated he lost that one. It was John Ruiz over Brian Schottenstein. It wasn't Miami over Tony Alford.
Oh man, yeah. The truck got backed up and they dumped out the money. Hey, that's welcome to modern college football, my man.
And God bless
So
him. Bless the kid.
hey, I'm telling you, especially when you play running back, because that is
Oh,
a
shelf life is short.
yes. There's you don't see NFL free agency opened up today, and you didn't see a single running back get a contract. So that tells you all you need to know. Every other position, offensive tackles, receivers, they signed today, not a single running back. So
Yeah.
that tells you all you need to know. Well, Bank, I appreciate it. This has been a great show. Any parting words as we wrap this thing up?
No, just keep an eye on Aaron Noland, and it'll get good when that visit takes place. And if Ohio State does offer him, does he try to commit on the spot, and do they take it, or do they try to put him off and he hears the music about to stop and he goes to Clemson? So that's it. Or does he go to Miami and take John Ruiz's money and room with Mark Fletcher? Or does he go to A&M? They want him. So there's a lot of moving parts here right now. But my guess is that I think Aaron Noland's going to be their quarterback, and I think it's going to be soon. I think it's going to be real soon. He's looking for a seat. So
there you go. Oh, we got the receivers, man. So that'll be fascinating to watch. Well, as always, the bank brought it like he always does. Bill the Bank Greene, only on BuckeyeScoop.com. If you guys enjoyed that, he has a notebook coming out in the next couple of days. Some of his recruiting stuff that he's been collecting. Also, big chat on Thursday. Bill the Bank Greene's legendary chat is always a blast. Best day of the entire week on BuckeyeScoop.com is the bank chat. So appreciate you guys all being in here. Click like if you enjoyed this video. Click subscribe. Click alert just so you can guys get the alerts for when we go live. We appreciate you guys as always. If you guys are following us on the podcast formats, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whichever else you guys are looking at, leave us a 5-star review. We would appreciate that. Those are huge for us to help grow the channel. So thank you guys as always. Again, you guys are the best. We appreciate all you guys. Shout out to Paul. I hope you feel better, my friend. I saw your note on the surgery, so I hope you feel better, my dude. Thank you guys, all of our regulars that are in here, Sue, the crew, all you guys are the best. We appreciate doing this with you guys every night. So I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your night. So thank you as always, Buckeye Nation. Thank you, Scoop family. You guys need to subscribe to BuckeyeScoop.com because it is killer and the content is cranking right now. We're going to have another notebook, another nugget coming out probably the next day or two. We're getting some more information on the first 2 spring practices. So going to watch that and evaluate some of the stuff that we saw, and we're going to get it to you guys. So we appreciate you guys as always. So I will see you guys on BuckeyeScoop.com. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Go Bucks.